your preferred partner for custom software development and technology outsourcing. We offer state-of-the-art customized software development services that are client-centric, flexible, and secure to empower businesses.
Ready? Absolutely. All right. Good morning, everybody. How is everybody doing today? Thank you for getting here in the hot and humidity from your hotels and everything. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm so happy to be here for many, many reasons, right? First is that it's the first face-to-face event since we got together in Atlanta in March of that year, whenever that year was. And it's great to see everybody with no mask so I can see your expressions and to be shaking hands, except for the 25 of you that I saw that went straight to the goo machine on the thing to wipe their hands after you shook hands with us. No? Okay, I tried. It's true, though. I see everybody doing it. My name is Steve Brumer. I'm a partner at a company called BH IoT Group with John Hubler here. I will be your moderator for this panel session as I've been for the last several years. This kicks off this event, which is fantastic. The whole idea of this is these four smarter than me guys that will talk about, from an analyst position, what's going on in the industry. I have a whole series of questions. The format's going to be simple. They're going to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to fire away at topics that will get discussed, whether it's heated or not, whether it's deep or not, whether it's philosophical or not. We're going to go for it. So that's the format, and we got 40 minutes and 20 seconds to do that. So why don't we go around the room and introduce yourself. James, why don't you go first?
Sure. I'm James Brehm. I'm the founder and chief technology evangelist with James Brehm and Associates. We're a boutique market research and consulting firm focused on IoT. We've been around for about 7 years, doing a couple $1 million a year in revenue. So.
Great. Hi, everyone. Ryan Martin. I am a research director at ABI Research. I lead our manufacturing and industrial research, which at a high level, so Steve, these are the things you can pepper me on. We cover three things. It's manufacturing-specific technologies, so things like simulation software, PLM, additive manufacturing, generative design. We cover technologies that make their way into manufacturing, so a couple examples would be AI, augmented reality, 5G, blockchain, of course analytics as well. And then we cover vertical markets. So think about the difference between Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing and automotive, which is very highly automated, versus pharmaceuticals, which you may not know is not that automated before the pandemic. Happy to be here.
John?
My name is John Pelson. I've been in the telecom industry for about 25 years on the equipment side with Lucent Technologies and JDSU. On the service provider side with Nextel and British Telecom. I recently wrote a book called Wireless Wars that looks at how the US invented cellular technology, went to China to make it cheaper and to sell it to the huge market, turned over the technology and promptly went broke. And now the US and America is without Nortel, Motorola, Lucent. We're looking at 5G and what our options are as a country and for the rest of the world to deploy 5G. And there's really just Huawei as the main leader and Nokia and Ericsson kind of hanging on to be second and third, really at a distance. And what the options are for the world to provide secure, effective 5G communications and whether there's options with Open RAN and other technologies like that to respond to China's dominance.
Excellent. Akshay?
Akshay Sharma. Speaking about Nortel, I'm an original Nortel BNR engineer back in '89, so I'm dating myself.
You're allowed.
Was chief architect at Siemens Mobile up in TRX in Boca and CTO of a smartphone startup. I'm the guy quoted in the Wall Street Journal in 2012, no way for Huawei. Said it was a wake-up call. Was an analyst at Gartner for a decade and then became an analyst with a boutique firm, NextCurve. And now I'm acting CTO for a couple of startups, Motivitee in the smart city 5G, Industry 4.0 enablement space.
Excellent. And again, my name is Steve Brumer. I'm with the firm BH IoT Group. We are a strategy, go-to-market, monetization, commercialization firm. So if you are looking to bring a product into the United States, if you're looking to expand your portfolio and into new markets, we are the company that helps you. So I'm going to ask the first question as it relates to what we've been experiencing over the last 16, 18 months, which is this COVID stuff. How have you seen COVID affect the industry itself, the IoT industry? Have you seen any significant changes, any significantly new innovative technologies or software? And in general, what have you seen from the world of COVID as it relates to IoT? James?
Wow. So you and I were together in Atlanta when the world shut down on
Yes, we were.
on March 15th or March 13th. And at that time, the show was that we were attending and speaking at Modex is a supply chain show, and there at that time, there was a low roar of people asking questions on supply chain issues. How do we connect this? There were factory automation folks saying, what do we use from a technology standpoint, and just asking the question. And I think that what happened was a real wake-up call, and we saw the questions immediately die and become RFPs and RFQs, right? And those went really fast into deployments. I've seen a lot of new and innovative products that I've been wondering, how come that guy isn't connecting that thing already? Happened since then. So I do think that there was an acceleration there, but we've also had that backlash from a supply chain standpoint of component shortages, right? Manufacturing shortages, and I don't know what's going to happen with respect to the catch-up there. As John has indicated, we've abdicated a lot of this stuff to China, and how do we get that back? So,
Yep.
What's interesting too about shortages in certain markets, so something like semiconductors. Semiconductors are pretty lean operation already. It's one of the few industries that actually can operate in a lights out capacity, in part because of their cleanliness requirements, but also in part because of their the volumes and demand for their products. So what it means when there's a fire or a plant goes down is it's really hard to recoup that margin. And at the end of the day, there's someone responsible for the plant or the facility or that bottom line number. And as a result, the only way to sort of bridge that gap is through these newer solutions that do improve collaboration, productivity, which what that means is that folks are focusing more on the solutions rather than the technologies. So 18 months ago, people would say, we want a digital twin strategy. Today, they want better remote monitoring to improve OEE. And that's just a different way of approaching the same problem. And what we're finding, especially in the technology supplier community, of which I would assume many of you associate with, is that's a completely different go-to-market motion. You're talking about personas and functional requirements, as well as the business benefits, so time saved and new output, rather than what it is that you're actually selling, the product itself.
John?
Yeah, we talk about the effect that COVID had on people's view of world trade and getting a wake-up call. This is a country that tends to sleep through the alarm. We keep seeing this over and over again. When COVID hit, people said, all right, we need to get billions of masks. All right, this virus that's coming out of Wuhan, where do we get the masks? China. Okay, well, damn it, this is America. Let's make our own masks. All right, where do we get the material to make the mask from? Okay, that's coming from the same place. We'll make our own material. Let's get some machines to build this material. And the world realized, Europe, US, Latin America, Africa, everything is coming out of China. It's cheap, it works, and China, unfortunately, also realized, the Communist Party there, that they had this grip on the rest of the world. And the power that they had to withhold supplies became very prominent, that they had this control and this authority. And that's certainly led now into a concern about 5G and electronics. Not just whether you can get it, but when you get it, is it going to be what you thought it was? Is there going to be a political angle to what it takes to receive those supplies? And I think it's the first time that developed countries that have the opportunity to provide this have kind of come alive and realized that they need to do a stronger response, mount a stronger response to the control that China has over the telecom sector too.
Well, having fortunately recovered from COVID last March, I remember as an analyst and then even as an engineer and a product manager at Siemens and other places, Nortel, we were talking about unified communications as a service even 15 years ago. CEBP, Communications Enabled Business Processes, where we would be doing video conferencing and have IoT sensors and all of that, but not much of a real deployment until all of a sudden now I'm asked to be on a teledoc session, and then I've got oximeters and different types of metrics and showing remote patient monitoring, and now all of a sudden these are becoming mainstream. So I think COVID has now wakened people up to the power of technology, and you mentioned IoT. IoT has been growing, but you could say it's been sort of slow, and now all of a sudden everything is becoming IoT enabled.
Well, having been in IoT for 25 plus years, I can assure you that it has been somewhat recession-proof, and from COVID now realizing that it's pandemic-proof in the sense that we never really saw any kind of huge downturn in our industry over the last 18 months at all. If anything, it's, as you said, it's been improving, more applications, more innovative products, more sensors being used for things that are in our daily lives. So I think COVID has turned out to be somewhat positive for us as an industry.
Steve, it's been incredible. And think about how COVID also punctured holes in all these other industries and showed how we can fix that,
and
right?
how we can,
the healthcare industry, where the hell are the monitors, right? Right?
Yeah.
It blew the hell out of the supply chain industry. I mean, it really did.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably what's going to happen next, too, is the integration of product design and development and supply chain.
Yeah.
But with, there needs to be an AI layer. It's really this notion of generative. So you have tolerances. Right now, when you're creating products, it can be, if you're creating a new Apple Watch, you have a certain amount of space where you need to fit the battery and the circuit and your antenna. Same requirements can translate over to the supply chain. So you know that you typically work with all of these suppliers. Think about automotive. They've got thousands of suppliers. Ford produces a new F-150 every 50 to 56 seconds. BMW, they ship, I think, 31 million parts to their factories every single day. So if you put bounds on who it is that you're working with based on things like, if you think about sustainability or circular economics or maybe trade barriers, and you bake that into your process, it's a really great way to insulate risk. And I think that's what a lot of executives are focusing on today is, okay, there are several kinds of risk. What is it that we can manage? And it's really execution risk.
All right, I'm going to take the big subject and get it out of the way early. So what is this 5G thing for us in the IoT space? Does this work? Are we doing private 5G, like private LTE is? I mean, what are we doing with this 5G thing? I'm not talking content. I'm not talking movies. I'm not talking video. Let's stick to the IoT stuff. Tell me where 5G fits into our world.
I'd just offer one overall comment. Unlike each of the succeeding generations before it, 3G, 4G,
2G,
1G,
and 1G.
We made a lot of money on 1 and 2G.
That's right. Typically, the improvements were in capacity and bandwidth and speed. 5G is faster, has more capacity, but that's not what makes it so special. What makes it special is it enables a new way of doing business and a way of living your life, more so than probably any other generation. So for governments, for municipalities, for factories, ports, 5G is the first generation that's really going to be industrialized into the process in a core way, which means it creates a vulnerability for infrastructure. You're going to have power grids that are entirely managed by 5G sensors. You're going to have hospitals that are completely controlled by 5G communications. Even the military, and I've learned this, the military relies heavily on public network wireless. And so this creates a vulnerability to anyone using a 5G system. It's not just downloading 30 Rock, it's doing things that are central to other activities.
Akshay.
But I think
Can't wait to hear this.
It also adds another dimension in edge computing, and I think that's the key aha. With industrial applications, you've got this notion of URLLC, ultra-resilient low-latency communications, which 5G enables, and that edge computing component can be made resilient. It can be hitless with hitless failover across different servers if it's architected right. I agree there are security vulnerabilities. It doesn't go away. In fact, 5G actually opens up more vulnerabilities. So we have to now, we can't just stick a firewall and say we're done. We have to think holistically. But if it's architected right, you could actually have microgrids that complement your electric grid as a backup. You could have, diverse sources of energy, diverse sources of SCADA IP to monitor and manage it all. If it's done right, this actually could be the innovation incubator for new thinking, new solutions, new Industry 4.0, and connecting the dots with that edge computer, I think, can be the vehicle for this.
I want to quickly ground us to, I agree with what you're saying, but I do want to ground us in the reality of where we are today. In manufacturing, 5G is not happening today. There are not devices, and there are very few actual, there are no production networks. Like if you talk to a company like VW, they don't foresee this happening until 2024 in terms of 5G playing a critical role on the actual production line. It is being used for back office applications, but still there's a level of maturity in the device ecosystem that needs to be there. That said, what will change when 5G is more broadly available is this whole notion of getting from remote monitoring, which is where industrial IoT or machine-to-machine started, to remote control. So being able to wirelessly control remote assets and perform, say, an emergency stop on a robot a mile away on the factory floor. That's, I think, the promise of 5G, but we are not there today.
The Germans aren't here today. The Japanese are. Okay, America or Honda is doing it in 142 plants.
So
Hitachi Astemo is running that network. So it is in some places.
But what devices? There may be dedicated cellular, but not 5G.
Yes, 5G.
So talk about their applications.
But what I wanted to say on this, there are some early adopters that are doing.
Oh, for sure. Nine
right.
of the top 10
But
global
also, I'm going to say
right.
that 5G is really a poor technology choice as well, and it's just another 3GPP. Let's have an arm wrestling match over how bad we can frickin' make something. If that wasn't the case, then I wouldn't be getting emails once a month or twice a month from the big NEMs talking about 6G already, right?
I got one of those.
Okay,
Let's say we'll be retired by then.
And nowhere in the 5G spec is there anything for Wi-Sun or LoRaWAN or any of the other technologies that some people are actually massively deploying right now, like for metering or for asset tracking. I mean, what the 3GPP did was they basically really created two parallel paths for low power, long-range stuff in LTE-M and narrowband IoT. Narrowband IoT has been a success in China, tremendous success in China and in Europe, and it's an abysmal failure in the United States. The guy that was responsible for that, for Verizon, is with Microsoft now, and actually admits it. NTT has shut down their narrowband network after spending millions of dollars to deploy it, and other carriers are looking at that as well. There are fewer narrowband devices and things out there. And when did we launch that? 2018, 19?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
But categorically, there's a lot of value in having a private network. I think we can
Absolutely.
probably agree on that.
Absolutely.
And the question is, what is the right flavor for your application or use case? It could well be argued that even the Wi-Fi private network, maintained by your in-house
And
IT
who's
department.
involved as vendors? I mean, is it the carrier? Is it a private scenario where you're just getting the spectrum to do it? And
Right. What's your operational
Right,
cost?
correct.
A big part of the problem, though, is that this dynamic, innovative new breakthrough is controlled by a bureaucratic organization that is dominated by incumbents that are either trying to hold on desperately to their market share
Yes.
or dominant new giants in the industry. if those are the people that get to set the rules and build the wall around the industry, it's going to be a long time coming before this is really deployed and embraced as a useful technology.
People used to say Intel developed all their products designed for obsolescence.
Yeah.
Well, so much so more than the NEMs and the carriers.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, Intel designed WiMAX too, but
Good
I knew
point.
that would come up this morning.
but let's go back. Private LTE, part of 5G is also the unlicensed arena. So that's where the whole private innovation can come up. You don't have to have the legacy carrier involved because it's unlicensed. So I think that's going to spawn off
I think
a
it's-
lot of innovation.
We're already
and-
seeing it.
and
Yeah,
growth.
the problem is the companies that would do a private enterprise LTE 5G deployment generally lack the technology, the know-how to build something that's reliable. And Ford is not going to let a local firm come by and rig it, and Verizon right now is not capable, and neither is Accenture or any of the smart integrators. No one's done this. No one really knows how.
Yeah,
Well,
but
what
you got groups out there like a Boingo that's doing it from a private LTE standpoint and rolling it out, and they got a lot of experience. So,
But Steve, you and I have talked about this before. There are basically 6 or 7 personas of the guys that are deploying this stuff and from a CTO or CIO level at the enterprise. And if they have a background in telco, they pick up the phone, they call Verizon first, right?
Right.
If they have a background in working with managed service providers, they're going to pick up the phone and call Accenture, Deloitte, or somebody like that first, right? It just depends on what their persona is. And I think there's been a piss poor job from us educating the world as to what's needed where and when. And instead, we had Trump standing up there saying we need nationwide 5G and we're gonna kill the world with it. Well, it's not that simple, guys.
Well, the guy in the National Security Council who proposed a nationwide federal 5G network was shown the door about 3 days later.
yeah.
Brigadier General walked out and fired for suggesting it. I don't necessarily support a federally operated 5G network, but at least he did get that something big had to happen.
Right. So when I prepped for this, I sent all these guys out an email saying, give me your top 2 or 3 topics to talk about. And the one that came back from every one of the panelists here was around security, whether it was cybersecurity attacks that we are having to deal with on a regular basis, whether it was security around 5G, whether it was security around COVID and the information that's associated with it. So my question to you is, what do we do? I mean, we have certain clients that have 2 or 3 security solutions going on at the same time for a single application and use case. Are we looking at identity management? Are we looking at, how do we handle this? There's so many different options that are out right now. So what do you think about security? Go, you first.
It's all of the above.
Oh, God. Did I say E? Was there an E, all the above? On there?
So having architected a 3G network with Singular when I was at Siemens Mobile back 15, 16 years ago, I remember saying to Chris Rini and company at Singular way back in Atlanta, oh yeah, security came up, and oh yeah, we've got the firewall, and we've got encryption, we've got login, blah, blah, blah. Everything is version controlled, and we're good to go. And that was pretty much it, like one slide. Well, now you need a book. You need multiple books on security. It's not only just encryption, it's firewalling, it's dynamic firewalling, it's behavioral analytics, it's DevSecOps, because guess what? You're going to be deploying new applications on this edge cloud. What version, what control, you got some open source. Oh, great. Are you doing open source security vulnerability assessments on the fly? Now it's a whole ecosystem. It's not just one size fits all. It's going to take a whole new paradigm. Oh, we've got auditors coming once a year. What happens the rest of the 364 days in the year? Do you have all the dashboards? Do you have a CISO designing all of this and monitoring and managing? So it's going to take more than just a one firewall type approach. It's going to take a whole holistic approach.
I'd say the security posture, at least in the markets that I look at, the security posture is absolutely changing. 18 months ago, if you asked about cloud, people said, nope, not for me. We keep all of our data on site. Today, that's changed because they need cloud for synchronization and NPI, new product introduction, and collaboration and distributed teams. It's also true that AWS and Azure probably have better security practices and policies than your homegrown IT department, depending on your organization and your size. So security is super important. You cannot do anything without a secure architecture and ecosystem, but you also need to think about your operational risk. What is it that you're willing to expose yourself to? And today, if you need to get product out the door and you have all the technical requirements baked in, so we talked yesterday, I think Sarah's here, embedding expertise into your products. That's what's going to be happening with 5G to make it more accessible to people. That's what happens with security across the board in IoT to make it more accessible, not just these large enterprises with huge R&D budgets, but also SMEs. And so security is super important, but I do believe that the posture is changing for, it's baked, like security is baked into a lot more products these days.
I don't disagree with what Ryan and Akshay are saying here, but I think James's point, as long as you have someone stopping the progress that you're discussing from happening, we're not going to get where we need to be. When I was writing Wireless Wars, everybody responded to my call and sat for an interview. So I could cold call Dan Hesse and Ben Verweyen. They'd give me hours of their time. The FBI and the NSA sat and talked with me, gave me information. The trade groups and the standards bodies ghosted me. I literally never had one call returned, including from people I worked with for 20 years. I'm writing a book, here's what it's about, I'd like to talk to you. I had to check my email, I thought it wasn't going out or it was going into spam or something. But the NSA gave me an hour and a half of time, and 3GPP and those groups wouldn't talk to me at all.
You know, and remember, guys, a layer of security doesn't fix stupid. We got ordinary people out there utilizing a lot of these products. We got ordinary people working for these manufacturers, you know, and as long as some administrative assistant keeps her password for her login to the network on a sticky note at her cubicle, right? That's a vulnerability that affects the manufacturing line too. You know, and most of these products are not being built with security built in at the layers that they need to be at today. And I don't know what the solution is, quite honest. You know, I've heard people say, oh, it needs to come from a federal mandate. What are we going to do?
No.
You know, put fine print on everything and wrap it up 3 times with a Surgeon General's warning that it's not secure and you could die from it?
You can do some things like
I don't know.
you eliminate default passwords.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have, people can't secure a $1,000 mobile phone. So if you got $1 million $3 device sensors with default passwords out of the box, that can't be even allowed. I think, I'm not a big fan of federal regulation, but the government, someone has to say you cannot sell a device with a published default password, because the hacking that has occurred on that basis alone
Yes.
has cost tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah, we have no idea how much it's cost, really, because so much of it's hidden, too. People don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I got hacked.
Well,
right?
here's the irony. This is the original show with Carl Ford and the rest of the team here that invented the session border controller. The SBC was in a previous version of this show way back when. And if you look at what's the hottest topic in cybersecurity is zero trust network access, ZTNA, where you basically assume everything is vulnerable. Everything, and you go on a per session by session basis, and you authenticate, you re-authenticate, you do multi-factor, you do whatever, you do biometric. You keep authenticating every session, and if that session, while the session's happening, changes, so the person on the phone goes from cellular to Wi-Fi, and now there's a man-in-the-middle attack in that Wi-Fi hotspot, you re-authenticate. You keep every session on a per session basis, and we may have to do that with IoT. Every IoT session becomes a zero trust network access methodology where you then authenticate on a per session basis.
Yeah, actually, I get that, but it still doesn't fix the stupid part of what people do. You know, 23 years ago, I'm at Rackspace, right? And we decided we're going to put biometric authentication to get into the server rooms, right? Okay, glass doors. We had a brick to prop open a door when we were carrying multiple servers in, sitting right there, okay? It doesn't fix stupid, right?
Or you also can, it's really hard to obfuscate serious motivation. You know, everyone's exposed no matter what you do. But I think if you have proper business practices and really give people a reason not to team up against you, there's probably a better place. I mean, even the oil pipeline hack, that wasn't about an operational thing. They couldn't bill. Like, that was it. They could have still pumped oil. They just weren't able to charge for it.
Yeah, the billing system got hacked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We have one of the parts about being on the analyst panel is analyzing this, and we're going to talk about the next, say, 18 months. So think about where we are today. What do you see dramatically coming out or involved in the industry over the next 18 months? James, you want to start? I mean, you came out with your 7th annual State of the Industry survey. You had top 5 barriers to adoption. Tell us about what you're seeing.
Yeah, the number one barrier to adoption, and it came up last year. So we've done, what, 6 or 7 of these State of the Industry surveys. And back in the past, security was always number one.
Right.
Or cost, right? They just, cost to deploy or security. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, wasn't in the top 20 last year, a dearth of talent, lack of skilled workers, lack of people with any knowledge of what IoT is, became number one. And that grew, actually, the distance between that and security grew. And when I think about what that means, actually a lack of talent actually leads to a lack of security as well, right? If there are people that don't understand this stuff, then how much more vulnerable are we? So what's the next 18 months look like? I don't know, Groundhog Day, acceleration a little bit faster. At least we're back to meeting face to face, but we may get locked down again sometime. I don't know. But I think there are things that need to really happen. Maybe in 18 months, the public 5G landscape will actually look like the maps that they show on TV commercials today. Maybe the noise around 5G, like Ryan said, right? Who's doing it? There's just a few. Maybe multiple people will get to it. And maybe we catch up there. I don't think the way that I'm seeing, and I don't want to be a pessimist here, but I don't see people really collaborating, and that's what's necessary here. When we did our survey, another thing we realized was that it takes a community to build and deploy a solution, right? On average, around 13 different partners to deploy a rock-solid solution. And of the 76% of people who say they've deployed a solution, an IoT solution, right? Only 26% of them are saying it's a success, right? And less than 30% also said they've done more than one. So it isn't this combinational thing where the fleet manager is also doing something else, right? So.
And John, in your response to my question, you had talent or lack of talent in the industry as one of the comments too. So you're going to elaborate on that, but talk about what do you see for the next 18 months? Besides your new book, which everybody needs to go to Amazon and get.
That's right.
Be a top seller.
Yeah,
make you with loads of money. Come back and tell us how the last year was.
Exactly. Right now, the talent in the industry mainly sits with Huawei. It's by far, they're bigger than Nokia and Ericsson combined, fivefold. The problem, what I think is going to happen in the next 18 months is that while the world is still suffering from and riled up over COVID, this is the window to say we can't have companies that are controlled by this Chinese Communist Party delivering the next generation of communications for the world. We go back, as I said, we sleep through the alarm in this country. The wake-up calls don't work. If 500,000 dead doesn't make us say this may not be a reliable government to turn to for our supply. I don't mean components. We're always going to be getting pieces and parts from China. They make them better and cheaper. But companies controlled by the government can't be in the link pin to delivering Internet of Things. And I think this is the window to say we got to go to an alternative, whether it's Nokia and Ericsson, whether it's an open radio access network model, we've got to do it now or we're going to go right back into that mode and say, but it's so cheap and it really works well, and they sent 7 technicians on Christmas Eve to fix it. These are the guys.
Well, having now worked on a few RFPs on smart microgrid projects with 5G, a smart campus, and a smart city enablement project, finally the word smart is real. I mean, 15 years ago when I was at Siemens going to LA and it was machine to machine, it was basically a glorified dimmer switch on a lamppost was considered smart in a smart city enablement project, or a traffic monitoring system with a camera, and that was considered smart. Well, now we're talking about holistic control. We're talking about dynamic provisioning of Industry 4.0 type applications, logistics, SAP HANA on an edge computer now needed on a pay-as-you-grow basis. Now we're talking about dynamic ERP, CRM, you name it. We're talking about new Industry 4.0 type applications with IoT, and now I think the smart is back. The innovation is back. We're starting to think again about what we can do with this new ultra-resilient, low-latency communication platform. And it doesn't have to be 5G. It could be Wi-Fi, it could be Wi-Fi 6, with encryption, of course. It could be CBRS, could be private LTE. But we're starting to think again, and now I'm seeing even mayors of cities actually mention 5G in this context. So I think that's what's new right now.
One thing I just want to add to this, smart cities, the thing that worries me the most after this research is that Huawei builds smart city solutions that will detect if members of the wrong minority group are gathering in a part of city where they really don't belong, and the AI notifies the police to get them. I don't know if Des Moines wants to deploy that network in their downtown.
So question about the next 18 months.
Yes.
I'll try to avoid buzzword bingo, but I'm going to hit a couple. So definitely tighter integration of the production chain and the supply chain. So if you think of producing products closer to where they're sold, used, and consumed. Also uplift in cloud, SaaS, and servitization, so new business models as a result of better visibility into end products and your customers and the way that they're actually using them. 2 other areas are digital twins. Unquestionably, I heard that over and over again, especially the last few weeks, and then sustainability. So being smart about the way that you're sourcing and producing products, while at the same time being mindful of your overall environmental footprint, either of the factory. I've even seen some really interesting simulations that companies like Dassault Systems are working on, which will actually break out carbon capture requirements for each stage of your bill of materials. That's the direction I think things are going.
One last thing, Steve, I think we're going to see fewer companies in the space.
Consolidation.
Yeah, we it was a couple of years ago when we did this panel. I mentioned that we had identified over 1,000 platforms that are out there, and now we're probably around the 700 mark on platforms. We've actually seen some consolidation. We've also seen some smart consolidation. Look at Multitech's acquisition of Radio Bridge, and then earlier being acquired by guys with some deep pockets and some really cool sensors, right? That leads to solutions. A lot of the stuff that's been out there has been, I buy a gateway from this guy and I buy a sensor from this guy and I hope to hell I can make it work. And that's why it takes 18 months to 2 years to get my proof of concept off the ground.
Yeah, you brought up, I agree with you on the roll-ups. I think there's going to be some consolidation or roll-ups of like-minded companies that are going to be better to fight the battles of international creep that we have from China, so I think that's a good one. The other thing I want to bring up is when it comes to the lack of talent that we're finding, it's a pool of talent that we don't have, and so I encourage everyone who's in the industry to really try and figure out a way to educate the youth of America for us to have a succession plan for some of us that have been in this industry a long time. It's the same issue that's happening in the telecom industry as well, that we are not doing a good job with the STEM students to get them excited about joining this. We're not going to the Georgia Techs of the world where they're going for a master's in computer science and everything related to it, but they're on this cybersecurity thing. IoT is hot and cool, you can still make a living and a really good living in the IoT space. We have to tell these young ladies in high school and college that this is a great industry to be involved in. And so it's our responsibility as leaders and thought leaders within the industry to do that. And I encourage every one of you to be able to get involved with some local STEM organizations to try and do that.
Well, it's happening in...
It is, but not enough.
Not enough, but also we've been talking for years about IT-OT convergence or IT-OT integration collaboration. Increasingly, though, there are more acronyms being part of that puzzle, right?
Absolutely.
So engineering technology, just one example of this. If you think of a Venn diagram, other spheres coming into that circle. And you're right, it starts with education, but there's just more complexity and also more collaboration that needs to occur.
And I agree with exactly what you said, Ryan. And my nephew actually told me when he went to college as a freshman 4.5 years ago, there's no chance in hell he was going to get into IoT. He said it would be done by now. Actually started last week he's got his master's from University of Alabama in data science, and he's doing autonomous vehicle stuff at GM. He started last week. So
You never know.
You know, it is. When we sit down with the youth and we explain to them what this is and what impact they can have, wow, it turns on the light bulb for them.
There's IoT in the convergence of IT and OT, if you look at the letters.
Yep. All right, whereas we come almost to the end of our session, this is my famous question that I ask every year at this panel. So if Steve Brumer were to give you a pile of money to start any business in the IoT space that will make me a 25% return on my investment in some particular period of time and be a successful IoT in a space, what would you do with my money?
I would look at edge computing on steroids. I would look at new innovation that's coming up. I would look at solution vendors that are trying to actually solve real problems with real deployments, and then try to incubate them. And I think you'll go from Steve Brumer to Steve Bomber.
I thought marrying rich was the only option I had. John?
I think I'd look at building useful enterprise applications, turnkey, usable enterprise applications.
Okay, as a solution provider.
Yep, because for all the componentry and everything else, security, what companies are going to want is small, discrete, localized solutions that they can rely on to do anything of value.
Okay.
High growth vice industries like cannabis. I'm only kidding, but in part. I'd say industrial software and the integration of systems. The industrial IoT platform landscape is certainly maturing beyond AEP, application enablement platforms, to tighter integration with the supply chain. So I'd think of something that targets that sector. It's all about standing up better data continuity across the organization. If you think of digital thread, digital twin.
Mr. James?
Since we do consulting, we're in meeting room number 3, just out there on the show floor. I've got NDAs ready to sign. So
That's what you do with my money?
absolutely.
Start getting back into the events business.
You can be a customer too, Steve.
Okay.
You can be a customer too.
I tried that. I'm gonna say systems integration. All you guys keep on bringing it back to the idea that who's going to put all this stuff together. It's not necessarily going to be the carriers. It's not going to be the Huaweis. It's not going to be a lot of the larger integration, SIs and that are out there playing for a lot of money. I still think that we are lacking someone throat to choke to put it all together from end to end for a customer successfully.
Yeah, I'd say it's not.
So not tongue in cheek, Steve. I think that is what I would do if I was only targeting the large enterprises. But most
Or
of
the
United,
manufacturing.
But most of the United States is made up of small businesses.
Medium. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And they need to buy this stuff, right? And there's nowhere that they can go to buy connected stuff that integrates and operates easily.
Out of the box.
Yeah. and have the experience.
And that's what I'm thinking. I'm saying SMB systems integration to roll it all up.
Yeah.
So, all right, we are done for the how many years have we been doing this? A long time, Carl. But I want to thank everybody for being here. This is an awesome panel. I'm very honored to do this every year to lead this panel discussion. So thank you very much. Give them a round of applause. Thank you.